January 3rd, 2026, was supposed to be about two of WWE's absolute best, delivering a wrestling clinic. Instead, it became the night that reminded everyone why professional wrestling at its highest level transcends wins and losses and becomes something approaching art. The first Smackdown of 2026 carried enormous weight heading into Royal Rumble in just over 3 weeks, with WWE's landscape having been completely reshaped over the holiday period through championship unifications, Shield destructions, rapid pushes and devastating falls, and creative decisions that prioritized surprise over predictability. But amid all that chaos, amid Brock Lesnar holding the undisputed WWE Championship and Roman Reigns destroying former brothers and Seth Rollins going rogue and CM Punk demanding recognition, there were two performers who hadn't been at the center of recent main event chaos, but who represented WWE excellence in its purest form. Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare who returned to WWE to complete his story and has been fighting to reach the absolute pinnacle, and Drew McIntyre, the Scottish warrior who has proven himself as one of WWE's most consistent main event performers, but has been seeking that definitive moment that cements legendary status. These two men, scheduled for a Smackdown main event that was announced with only 48 hours' notice, proceeded to deliver a match so technically excellent, so emotionally resonant, so perfectly executed from bell to bell that it temporarily made everyone forget about championship chaos and storyline controversies and just appreciate professional wrestling performed at the absolute highest level. But the real story wasn't just the match itself. It was what happened in the final moments, what happened after the 3 count, and what those developments mean for both men heading into Royal Rumble and beyond. The question everyone needs to ask themselves is simple but profound. Can a match with no championship stakes, no long-term storyline build-up, announced with minimal notice, still be more memorable and more significant than matches with all those advantages, purely through the quality of performance and the unexpected directions that emerge from that performance? Let me take you back to how this match came about, because the setup reveals interesting things about WWE's current creative philosophy and how they're attempting to balance chaos with quality. After the championship unification chaos on the previous Smackdown, where Brock Lesnar defeated both Obafemi and competed against Roman Reigns before being declared undisputed champion through executive decision, WWE needed to rebuild some credibility around match quality and pure wrestling excellence. The announcement came via Triple H's social media on January 1st. Smackdown this Friday will feature a main event between two of WWE's absolute best, Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre. No championship implications. No interference. No storyline complications. Just two world-class performers delivering the kind of match that reminds everyone why WWE is the pinnacle of professional wrestling. If you care about wrestling as an art form, you'll want to watch this. The announcement was unusual because it explicitly acknowledged there were no stakes beyond pride and proving oneself, which runs counter to traditional booking wisdom that matches need championships or storyline heat or future implications to matter. But Triple H was making a bet that quality alone could draw attention, that fans would respond to the promise of an excellent match even without traditional hooks. The immediate reaction was cautiously positive. Both Cody and Drew are beloved by hardcore fans who appreciate technical excellence, and the promise of them getting significant time without storyline interference was appealing. But there was also skepticism about whether casual viewers would care about a match with no apparent stakes, whether this represented WWE giving up on storyline-driven programming in favor of work-rate-focused content that historically hasn't drawn as strongly in North America as it has in other markets. The build-up over the next 48 hours was minimal but effective. Cody cut a promo on social media about respecting Drew's abilities and looking forward to proving himself against someone operating at the highest level. Drew responded with mutual respect mixed with competitive edge, acknowledging Cody's legacy and accomplishments while making clear that respect doesn't mean he'd hold back or make things easy. There were no insults, no personal attacks, no cheap heat tactics. Just two professionals expressing eagerness to compete against each other. It was refreshing in an era where most feuds rely on personal animosity or disrespect, seeing two performers simply wanting to have an excellent match against a worthy opponent. The show itself built toward the main event throughout the evening with video packages highlighting both men's careers, their previous encounters, their technical abilities, and signature sequences. The production quality was exceptional, creating genuine anticipation for the match without relying on storyline drama or manufactured controversy. When the main event time slot arrived approximately 2 hours and 20 minutes into the broadcast, the atmosphere in the arena was electric, with the crowd clearly ready for something special. Cody's entrance received a massive reaction, his connection with audiences remaining incredibly strong despite not currently being in the championship picture. Drew's entrance was equally impactful, his presence and intensity commanding attention the moment his music hit. The bell rang, and what followed for the next 32 minutes was a masterclass in professional wrestling storytelling through action rather than words. The early sequences established mutual respect, with both men adhering to clean breaks and technical exchanges that showcased their abilities without descending into exhibition-style cooperation that breaks suspension of disbelief. They were competing, genuinely trying to defeat each other, but doing so with the kind of technical precision and strategic thinking that only comes from elite-level performers who understand psychology and pacing at an instinctive level. Here's the first critical question that emerged as the match progressed. How do you maintain dramatic tension and crowd investment in a match with no championship stakes and no storyline heat? The answer, demonstrated brilliantly by both performers, is through escalation of physicality, through near falls that feel genuinely close to being finishes, through both men showing vulnerability and resilience in equal measure. Around the 12-minute mark, after a sequence where both men had hit signature moves without securing victory, the crowd was completely invested, chanting for both competitors at different moments, creating that rare atmosphere where everyone wins regardless of match outcome because the quality is so high. The middle portion of the match, roughly minutes 13 through 22, featured some of the best counter-wrestling and chain sequences seen on WWE television in months. Drew's power advantage was consistently answered by Cody's superior technical skills and ring awareness. Cody's attempts at his signature offense were countered by Drew's educated strikes and submission attempts. Neither man could establish sustained dominance, creating a perfectly balanced contest that had the crowd on the edge of their seats for every exchange. The storytelling was simple but effective. Two evenly matched competitors pushing each other to their absolute limits, discovering new levels of ability through being forced to overcome an opponent who wouldn't be easily defeated. But around the 23-minute mark, something shifted that created the first hint that this match might be building toward something beyond just an excellent performance. CM Punk appeared on the entrance ramp, not in ring gear but in street clothes, simply watching the match with intense focus. His presence immediately created speculation about motivation. Was Punk scouting potential Royal Rumble opponents? Was he planning to interfere? Was his appearance somehow connected to storylines we weren't aware of? The cameras cut to Punk periodically, and his expression remained neutral but intensely focused, studying both competitors with the attention of someone analyzing future opponents rather than just casually observing. The second critical question. Why was CM Punk there, and what was his interest in a match he had no apparent connection to? The answer wouldn't become clear until after the match concluded, but Punk's presence added an element of unpredictability to what had been a pure wrestling contest, creating anticipation about whether he'd somehow involve himself or whether his appearance was simply observation without intervention. Drew and Cody both noticed Punk's presence, but didn't allow it to distract them from their match, maintaining focus on each other rather than playing to or acknowledging the watching CM Punk. The final sequence of the match, beginning around the 28-minute mark, reached a crescendo that had the entire arena on their feet. Both men had exhausted their primary offense, with multiple finishers attempted and countered. Cody had hit 2 crossroads that Drew kicked out of, demonstrating the Scottish Warrior's legendary toughness. Drew had connected with a Claymore kick that Cody somehow rolled through, showing the American Nightmare's ring awareness and survival instinct. The crowd was molten hot, sensing they were witnessing something special, something that would be replayed and discussed for years regardless of who ultimately won. At the 31-minute mark, after a sequence where both men collided mid-ring and collapsed from mutual exhaustion, they slowly pulled themselves up using each other for support in a visual that perfectly captured the mutual respect and evenly matched nature of the contest. They exchanged forearms in the center of the ring, each strike becoming progressively stiffer, both men running on pure adrenaline and competitive pride. Drew backed Cody into the corner and charged for a Claymore, but Cody moved at the last possible second, causing Drew to crash into the turnbuckles. Cody immediately capitalized with a disaster kick, then hit a third crossroads, this time holding on and rolling through for a second consecutive crossroads in the same sequence. A move he's used to put away the absolute toughest opponents when single finishers aren't enough. Cody covered Drew. The referee counted. 1, 2, 3. The match was over after 32 minutes and 17 seconds of what most people watching agreed was the best television match WWE had produced in months. Cody's music played, the referee raised his hand, and the crowd gave both performers a standing ovation that continued for several minutes. This was the kind of ovation that transcends typical wrestling crowd reactions, the kind that acknowledges not just victory, but exceptional performance that justified the time investment and delivered on the promise of quality that had been advertised. But the real story began after the match officially concluded, when Cody helped Drew to his feet in a show of respect, when Drew nodded acknowledgement and raised Cody's hand before exiting the ring to allow Cody his victory moment. CM Punk, who had been watching from the entrance ramp throughout the later portions of the match, began walking toward the ring. The crowd's reaction immediately shifted from celebratory to anticipatory. What was Punk's intention? The atmosphere became electric with uncertainty as Punk grabbed a microphone at ringside and entered the ring where Cody stood, sweating and exhausted from the match, but clearly prepared to deal with whatever confrontation Punk was initiating. "That was incredible," Punk began, his tone genuine rather than sarcastic, which immediately subverted expectations that this would be a typical heel promo diminishing someone else's accomplishment. 32 minutes of absolute excellence. Technical mastery. Storytelling through action. Exactly the kind of wrestling I fell in love with before this business became about part-timers holding championships and developmental projects getting pushed before they're ready. The crowd cheered, recognizing Punk was praising Cody while taking subtle shots at Brock Lesnar and Oba Femi respectively. "Cody, I've said some things about you over the years. Some were professional disagreements. Some were probably more personal than they needed to be. But tonight, watching you and Drew deliver that match, I remembered why I respect you as a performer even when I don't agree with your choices or your approach." Cody, breathing heavily but maintaining composure, raised his own microphone. "Phil, I appreciate the compliment, but I'm going to guess you didn't come out here just to praise a match you watched. What do you want?" The directness cut through any potential for extended verbal sparring, forcing Punk to get to his actual point rather than dancing around it with more commentary and observation. The third critical question. What was Punk's actual motivation for this confrontation, and where was it leading? The answer reshaped both men's directions heading into Royal Rumble in ways nobody predicted. "You're right, I'm not just here to compliment your match quality," Punk acknowledged. "I'm here because Royal Rumble is in 3 weeks. Brock Lesnar is the undisputed WWE champion through corporate decision-making rather than definitive victory. He defends that title in a fatal four-way against Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and me. Meanwhile, there's the Royal Rumble match itself, where 30 competitors fight for a WrestleMania main event championship opportunity. And I've been thinking about which prize matters more, being champion or being the person who main events WrestleMania challenging the champion." Punk paused, and you could see calculations happening in Cody's expression as he tried to determine where this was going. "What I realized, Cody, is that you're not in either match. You're not in the fatal four-way despite being one of the best performers in this company. You're not openly declared for the Royal Rumble despite obviously being a threat to win it. You're in this weird position where WWE has you delivering Match of the Year candidates on television, but not positioning you for the top prizes that your ability justifies. And that's a waste. So here's what I'm proposing. Punk moved closer to Cody, the two men now face to face in the center of the ring with the crowd hanging on every word. You and I have history. We've had great matches in other companies years ago. We've had disagreements and conflicts and mutual respect buried under layers of professional complications. But we've never had the definitive match, the one everyone remembers, the one that settles who's actually better when we're both at our absolute best. So I want to make you an offer. Royal Rumble, on the same night I'm wrestling for the Undisputed Championship in the Fatal 4-Way, you and I have a match. Not for a championship. Not for #1 contendership. Just for pride, for legacy, for proving who's the better wrestler when everything is on the line. The offer was simultaneously straightforward and complicated. On one hand, it was exactly what Punk had framed it as, a high-profile match between two exceptional performers with no stakes beyond proving superiority. On the other hand, CM Punk was scheduled to compete in the Fatal 4-Way for the Undisputed Championship, which meant he'd be wrestling twice at Royal Rumble if Cody accepted, which created potential advantage for other Fatal 4-Way competitors if Punk was exhausted from an earlier match. The strategic implications were obvious, and Cody's expression showed he was working through all of them before responding. "Let me make sure I understand," Cody said carefully, his tone mixing interest with skepticism. "You want to wrestle me at Royal Rumble, and you're willing to do that on the same night you're competing for the undisputed WWE Championship in a Fatal 4-Way. Knowing that wrestling me first would potentially disadvantage you in the championship match because you'd be dealing with fatigue and accumulated damage. Why would you do that unless you're either incredibly confident in your conditioning or you have some ulterior motive I'm not seeing?" Punk smiled, acknowledging Cody's strategic thinking. "Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe I just want the match because I believe we'd tear the house down and remind everyone what professional wrestling can be when egos take a back seat to performance. Maybe I'm confident enough that even after wrestling you, I can still win the Fatal 4-Way. Or maybe..." Punk leaned closer, his voice dropping to a more serious tone. "Maybe I know that if I don't take this opportunity to wrestle you now, while we're both at this level and while the moment is right, I'll regret it for the rest of my career. Championships come and go. WrestleMania opportunities happen or they don't. But the chance to have a genuinely classic match with someone operating at your current level, that's rare, and I'm not going to let it pass by just because the timing is inconvenient or because it doesn't fit traditional booking logic." The fourth critical question: should Cody accept this offer, knowing it would give him a Royal Rumble match and high-profile positioning, but wouldn't directly lead to championship opportunities or WrestleMania main event placement? The answer revealed something important about Cody's character and his priorities as both a performer and a character. "Phil, I came back to WWE to complete my story, to accomplish what my father never could by winning the WWE Championship. That's still my goal, my priority, my reason for being here. But you're right that I've been in this strange position where I'm delivering excellent matches without being positioned for the absolute top prizes." Cody paused, and you could see the internal debate playing out across his face before he reached his decision. "So yes, I accept your challenge. Royal Rumble, you and me, no championship stakes, just two of the absolute best proving who's better on that particular night. And maybe, just maybe, that match leads somewhere that gets me closer to completing my story. Or maybe it's just an incredible match that we're both proud of regardless of what comes next. Either way, I'm not turning down the opportunity to wrestle CM Punk at Royal Rumble just because it doesn't fit some traditional path to championship gold." The crowd erupted at Cody's acceptance, recognizing this was a significant match being made and appreciating both men's willingness to prioritize match quality over strategic positioning. But before either man could say anything further, Roman Reigns' music hit, and the tribal chief appeared on the entrance ramp with the Usos flanking him. Roman's expression was unreadable, but his presence was clearly intentional, suggesting he had something to say about this development that directly affected his own Royal Rumble plans. How touching, Roman's voice dripped with sarcasm as he addressed the ring. CM Punk and Cody Rhodes making a match for Royal Rumble because they want to prove who's better, because they care about match quality and wrestling as art or whatever self-important nonsense they're selling. Meanwhile, the actual main event of Royal Rumble, the fatal four-way for the undisputed WWE Championship that I'm competing in, gets complicated because CM Punk is going to be exhausted from wrestling Cody first,